It is Lettermen Live. We're back. It's Mick Walker on the other side of your screen. It's Spencer Holbrook. Between Mick and I is the Wendy's logo. That means it's Lettermen Live, presented by Wendy's. Welcome to Lettermen Live, presented by Wendy's. 2 faves for just $7. It's got to be Wendy's at Dynamic Duos. Go to Wendy's right now. Get 2 of your favorites for just $7. Mick, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Spencer. I'm sorry for anybody that might have been looking for this earlier in the day. I was at the Ohio High School Football Coaches Clinic earlier today. Listened to Ryan Day, Matt Guerreri give their speeches. Matt Guerreri went a little bit more specific on defense. Ryan Day kind of walked through the journey of them winning a national championship. Big applause, big congratulations for everybody in attendance for Ryan Day and Matt Guerreri. So it was good to see them and kind of interact with some of the high school coaches. So good start to my Friday. And I know it's a good start to your Friday because you got that clean haircut on you.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, got a nice little haircut. My guy Jack got me right. Shout out to Jack. He's been cutting my hair for about a year now. I know people in the comments sometimes make comments on people's hair. I don't really get a lot of those because Jack does pretty well for me. So shout out to Jack, my guy who cuts my hair. Not a sponsor, could be if he wants to be. Over at the barbershop here in town. Hey, what did they get Ryan Day? You said that on social media that he got a gift from the Ohio High School Coaches Association. What was the little gift?
Nice rectangular, like panoramic shot of when the confetti was coming down. They got it for they probably bought 6 or 7 of them. Matt Guerreri left with one. Rob Keys, the special teams assistant who spoke on Thursday night, left with one. I think Ed Terwilliger left with one. Tim Hinton. You're talking a couple old Ohio high school football coaches. So they are big time. I mean, so they all got one. 5 or 6 of them, like I said, all left with them. And really, it was the lightest Ohio State contingent I had kind of ever seen at one of these things because most of the time, I think the vacations have kind of been, they push them off for as long as they can. Typically, Brian Hartline's a mainstay at this as a Northeast Ohio guy that has a lot of connections in state. He wasn't there because I imagine he's on vacation. A lot of the other guys, I mean, obviously, you got the new assistants that we're going to talk about. They're not on yet. I don't know where like Billy Fessler or something, Keenan Bailey, like those guys I imagine are all on vacation with their younger kids and families. So it was Rob Keys, it was Ryan Day and Matt Guerreri there today, and they all walked out, like I said, with the nice panoramic shot of the stadium. They also, it was funny, they brought the trophy there today for all the coaches that would like to take the picture with it. And when Gerald Cook, who is the vice president, I believe, of the Coaches Association, he was my offensive line coach in high school. Great guy. He works at Granville now. He stepped up there when he was introducing Ryan Day. He said, hey, we're going to have the trophy over here in the back corner. If anybody would like to take a picture with it, you can. Number one rule is don't touch it, which is what you and I have heard every single time that they bring the trophy around. Do not touch it. Ryan Day and Matt Guerreri both said, no, you guys, if we won this, you guys have also won this. So feel free to touch it or do whatever you want to do with the trophy. And Matt Guerreri, we're not supposed to put out a ton of quotes and stories. So everybody that was in the room gets to remember the story. There was a story told about Jack Sawyer dropping the trophy at a team event after the national championship, told by Matt Guerreri. That was quite funny and got a good pop out of the room. So all around good vibes with the national championship trophy as the national champions at the local high school football coaches clinic.
Hey, man, when you're on top, you can do a lot of fun stuff. And hey, between Jimmy Fallon and Kelly Clarkson and now at the Coaches Association, Ryan Day playing softball with the softball team, the soon-to-be very good softball team under new leadership there. Like, Ryan Day's kind of living it up, man. And kudos to him because he went through a really tough, 3 weeks there in early December.
And he mentioned that as well. He talked about kind of I know you guys, thanks for everybody that supported us. I know there's some of you guys out there that probably weren't our biggest fans this season and kind of got a chuckle out of the fans. Matt Guerreri brought it up as well. Obviously, you have coaches from all over Ohio. Could be Toledo guys, could be different corners of this area, just not Ohio State fans. So he made sure to kind of chuckle about that. And they showed the picture of, so in case anybody's wondering, Ryan Day refers to the Jack Sawyer touchdown as Scoop and Sawyer. That's what they refer to it inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. They also refer to the Jeremiah Smith catch as third in Jeremiah. So you can remember those ones if you want to mark them down. He showed a picture of the Jeremiah Smith catch, and he had his laser pointer, and he circled his son, RJ, in the background with his hands around his head doing one of these in a shocked look. And he goes, that's just the coach's son. You can see right there. I mean, he's having the time of his life because he knows what this touchdown means. And because a couple of weeks ago, his life wasn't all that good. And he said that plain out. And so, it's, like you said, he's living a good life. He's having a lot of fun. Obviously, I imagine hiring assistant coaches is probably just as fun as doing this or getting to go on vacation now too, Spencer.
Yeah, man, he's got to get on vacation at some point. I think he does. I think at some point Ryan's going to have to take like a week and just like, I know the man likes to ski. I know the man likes to play tennis. I know the man has been overseas a couple times. Who knows where he'll go? Where in the world is Ryan Day? I guess that's the February segment because that man's got to get away for at least a little bit before spring ball starts. Spring ball will start, by the way, after spring break. So we're expecting spring ball to start after that spring break, which is February 10th or March 10th through the 14th. I think it's going to be a really truncated spring practice, Mick. We don't have the schedule yet. There's some whispers out there of a possible spring game date, potentially like April 12th. But that's nothing is set in stone. So it's just kind of interesting that like usually by now we've got like an idea of what spring practice is going to look like, but they're not even starting till after spring break because they won the national championship on January 20th, and the season is way too long. So now they're going to give themselves a little bit of time to actually have winter workouts and put these guys through the ringer of having the winter workouts and getting better off of a national championship season. But by the way, Ryan Day's got to hire new coaches. Still nothing official from the program. Ohio State has not made anything official. So things could, I guess, change. But the expectation is that Ohio State will hire Tyler Bowen, the Virginia Tech offensive coordinator, as its offensive line coach and run game coordinator. It will promote Brian Hartline to offensive coordinator from wide receivers coach. He will still be the wide receivers coach. Don't panic anybody. And then Billy Fessler, a quarterback's assistant, he will have as his quarterback's coach. So he gets a nice promotion as well, the 29-year-old kind of coaching phenom, if you will. Hired away from Akron with Joe Moorhead by Chip Kelly, and then hired to be Ryan Day's quarterback coach after he just worked with Chip Kelly. We're still breaking all of this down, Mick, while Ohio State doesn't have a defensive coordinator. We've talked a lot about these three coaching moves that Ohio State has now made on the offensive side of the ball. As this starts to sink in a little bit, have you heard from any more recruits? Have you gotten a feel for the way that Tyler Bowen is going to operate as the offensive line coach? I know he still can't reach out to guys in an official capacity from Ohio State, which kind of throws a wrench into all of this because it's not official yet. But it seems like the recruiting is already the ball's already starting to roll down the hill there.
Yeah, I think there's been a few more texts of, hey, like, let's catch up here soon. Once things become official, you can't really initiate contact. He can't, like, say Carter Scruggs, who's a 4-star offensive lineman for Virginia. He can't say, Carter, you have an offer from Ohio State on behalf of Tyler Bowen. That just can't happen yet until he gets hired. So not a lot on the Tyler Bowen front. I did catch up with Jason Brown and Marcus St. Clair being Tavian St. Clair's father. Yeah, he coaches middle school football for Bell Fountain, and Jason Brown is the head coach at Bell Fountain High School. Caught up with them a little bit as I was walking out. They both seem to really like the Billy Fessler hire. They're excited to kind of see what he's doing there and how he's going to be able to operate. I think Tavian likes Billy, so that's something to be noteworthy and be happy about. The other thing Coach Brown really brought up was he liked the energy that McArary brought into that meeting. So that's another little sidebar from the clinic. But as far as those new assistants, not a ton going on. I imagine we'll see some of these quarterbacks, like I said, like we've talked about. You're going to see once this calendar ends, I think, like you said, there's going to be a couple of weeks off from spring practices. That does not mean those first couple of weekends when things are free and open after the dead period. We could still very well see 8 to 10 person groups of recruits maybe get up to campus, get the offensive linemen up to campus, Max Riley, Sam Greer, Adam Guthrie, maybe, Darius Gray, Carter Scruggs, anybody you can name, like some of these guys they might go after and say, hey, let's get up everybody big weekend with Tyler Bowen. Let's all get to meet each other, get everybody in the pot, and let's just all mix it up and see how everything's going. So I think that's an option. I think you're going to see a lot of these guys come up and visit, these quarterbacks come up and visit like a Bo Bentley or some of these guys that they've recently offered. You could see Matt Ponatoski, Nathan Bernard, a couple of these in-state guys as well. And the biggest thing currently is we're working through some different official visitors that are coming up. We wrote about a couple of them on what is it, Thursday, what would have been. We had a couple of them confirmed nationally. Like you have Louisiana wide receiver Jabari Back, who camped in Columbus this summer. He's going to come up for an official visit. Braden Robinson, who out of Red Oak, Texas, who Brian Hartline visited last week. He's going to come up for an official visit. Zion Ely, the 5-star defensive end committed to Maryland, he said, hey, I'm going to come up for an official visit. 4-star defensive lineman Cameron Brooks from Georgia said, hey, instead of going to Miami for this weekend, I'm going to actually take an official visit to Ohio State, which Chad Simmons reported over late last weekend, I believe. So there's been some different movement on officials, and you're kind of seeing that now after you have those in-home visits, those meetings with the coaches into January. Let's get some things settled, especially because when you have these unlimited official visit counters, Now you're saying guys are trying to take 5, 6, 7, and you can take them all the way up until May. So you're going to look at guys probably taking 6 to 7 of them starting first weekend of May. And that's the big thing kind of going around the recruiting world right now is those official visits.
They seem like they're already starting to stockpile these officials, get them set in, because if you don't get an official visit set in with somebody else might get them on campus, and then that's the weekend you wanted them. So you might as well be the first to get that official visit locked in, and start to get that schedule worked out so there's no conflicts there. Because I always think it's funny. We're like, oh, why didn't Ohio State host a junior day the last weekend of, what is that, August? Or no, it's July, I think. The barbecue at the big house and the Georgia junior day and the Clemson junior day.
Well, that last year was the last year, but those are no longer.
Yeah. No, yeah, but I always thought it was funny where, like, the programs who didn't host one, everybody was like, oh, why didn't we host one? It's like, well, the kids can't be everywhere at once.
Yeah.
And if you talk to your top 20 targets and they've already locked in a visit to, 10 of them are going to Michigan, 5 of them are going to Clemson, and 5 of them are going to Miami, or then 2 of them are trickling in at, some weird spot like Arizona or something. It's like, well, why would we host one if none of our top guys are going to be there?
Yeah.
When we can just make sure that they come for a game day visit in the fall. Like, I think it's important for Ohio State to get these things settled early, like way early. So when this guy's coming into town, what the official visit calendar is. That if you have a defensive end, 5-star defensive end that you're trying to get to visit, and you're trying to figure out what weekend he should visit, well, he should probably visit with the 5-star quarterback and the 5-star defensive tackle and the 5-star corner, so you can try to wrangle these guys together and get them to start believing in the class together. Like, those visits start to come out so early, and you think, like, why? That's in June. Like, why do I care that he set his official visit date? That stuff's important, man. It really is.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it's kind of just organizing. Like, I think James Laurinaitis has already circled his weekend of, hey, we're going to get my group of guys is going to come in on this weekend. And like I said, you can take 10 of these official visits to different schools. You can take an unlimited amount of them, and that's perfectly fine if you're a prospect. But I think Ohio State would very much prefer, let's keep it these 4 weekends in June and kind of just build our weekends around that. So that's going to be like starting May 31st through June 1st is like that first main weekend and for official visits. And I think Ohio State will use all the corresponding weekends, but I don't think we're going to see him bring a lot of guys in May 1st for official visits or whenever that first weekend of May is. So like you said, it's important because Ohio State wants to be able to take these, be very structured about it. We saw him last year take Riley Pettijohn and get him on campus for an unofficial visit in like May or April. And I believe they would still want to be able to do that. They're going to be guys that this spring and this offseason that they identify and say, hey, let's move in. He's moving up the board. Let's get him on campus a couple times unofficially, officially again in June, and then we'll even it out. I don't think they're going to want to fire the official visits too early. I think they were very happy with how some of those results worked with Riley Pettijohn, some of the ways that it worked with. It didn't come all the way home with David Sanders, obviously, right? He did not sign with Ohio State, but still the process, I think they liked how that process went. So I expect them to kind of operate with, hey, a couple spring unofficials, get you on campus for a June official, and we'll go from there. So I think that's what you're going to kind of see them do. Because that's just Ohio State, how Ohio State likes to operate. And like you said, you get them on campus with some of these with either your quarterback commit or your other commits, Chris Henry Jr., some of those guys that are already in the class, and you build that class from within in the month of June.
Yeah, it's different than was it the class of 2023 where they had that massive visit weekend the last weekend of June. It was like their big one. Caleb Downs' official visit was that weekend. It was like 10 5-stars were all on campus, and we thought that there were going to be fireworks coming out of that, and this Ohio State 2023 class was just going to explode from there. And I don't think any of those guys ended up at Ohio State, and everybody had to be like, whoa, what did we do wrong here? And how can we fix it for the next recruiting class? And I don't think that's what Ohio State felt this past year, where I think they liked the process with all of these guys, even if some of these guys didn't end up choosing Ohio State. The process is important with these recruitments. And so I just think it's interesting. Just a general update here. We're talking Tyler Bowen. We're talking new coaching staff. We're talking recruiting. But the thing that I wanted to talk the most about today, Mick, and I don't know if you've seen it over on social media. If you haven't, you should. Ohio State is currently counting down and voting on the top play of the season. I don't know who put the bracket together, but it's kind of genius because, first of all, it's social media engagement, which all of us are gunning for, whether you're an Ohio State fan account, an Ohio State team account. I see all the Ohio State fan accounts. I know you guys are trying to get engagement on social media, and that's fine. Sometimes I do too. But the Ohio State football account obviously doing some engagement stuff there by trying to find the best play with a fan vote, which I think is cool. The plays that I forgot about are even more fun to look at than the plays that will ultimately win. Like 3rd and 11 is probably going to win, or Caleb Downs' punt return against Indiana. We're not going to forget that. You know, but like Davison Igbinosun's interception right now is going against Will Howard's slide to win the game against Penn State, and Jack and Tyleek having a sack against Nico Iamaleava in Tennessee is going against Quinshon Judkins' 86-yard run against Marshall. And it's like, man, I forgot about all these plays, and it's awesome. So I'm not going to ask us to do a bracket of the best play. I think we can just kind of name our favorite play of the entire season here. But what do you think about the idea of Ohio State actually promoting a bracket that shows like the best play of the national championship season?
Yeah, I think it's what you, like you said, social media wise, you're riding off the high of the past season.
Oh yeah, it's cool.
Otherwise, like the creatives at Ohio State, they do such a great job. So you have all these clips, you have all these different things. Why don't you get them out and let's resurface them again? Let's show everybody, kind of relive this season. That was just one of the better seasons in Ohio State history when it comes to ending the result with a national championship. And then, like you said, for us, it's kind of interesting because you look back at it and you go, like the Caleb Downs punt return. Spencer kind of knows my game day operations. I'm in and out of the underground tunnel there for going through photos and whatnot. So we were actually, obviously, after defense goes off the field, special teams change. I kind of go in there, and Ohio State's coming towards the end zone where the photography area is. So I'm like, okay, no punt return. Hasn't been a punt return since before I could drive a car. So I'm like, I'm not gonna sit out here on the field and wait for it to happen. We're down here typing. I got all these other photographers with me right here typing, and all of a sudden it goes quiet because they punt the ball, nothing, dead silence, and then just a roar from the crowd. One of the loudest times I've heard it in the state, being down there, and you're just, oh crap, what did we miss? And luckily there's another reporter who covers Ohio State that has his laptop typically on the game, a row in front of me, so I was able to kind of catch up with it visually. But just hearing that is something I'll remember from the season always, just kind of the reaction of the crowd for that one. That's a play that I remember. I imagine the Jeremiah Smith, the touchdown against Western Michigan is up there. That's one that kind of gets snuck away. But I mean, still that touchdown, him blowing by everybody, is pretty epic. And then there's the funny thing about Ohio State is when you get to these blowout games, you're still putting 4 and 5-star guys on the field. So like you can have James Peoples runs, or you can have Sam Williams-Dixon runs. It's like, oh, that's really exciting for the future. But that was also a cool individual play in that game. And I think that's some of the fun things to look back on too when we have the opportunity to dive into this past season more.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the Julian Sayin touchdown pass to Bennett Christian, where, to be honest, I mean, we will be honest, Western Michigan just forgot Bennett Christian was on the field. But still, it was cool because it was Julian Sayin's first touchdown pass, and like he threw it to an open guy on the run, and Bennett got his first touchdown. It was kind of a full circle moment for Bennett after he got suspended the year before. Here's my thought on this, Mick. The play of the year bracket is awesome. I love it. I like it. It's incredible. But man, like some of these matchups, I hate that they have to go against each other. Like this matchup here is one of the matchups that you can go vote on right now. It's in round 1, but I know who's going to win. It's the Rose Bowl, Will Howard to Emeka Egbuka rope for a touchdown where Emeka catches it with one hand. So like that play is obviously going to win unless it goes against like the scoop and score, the scoop and Sawyer. But it's going against, in the first round, it has to go against Jaden Fielding clinching the national championship game with a kick. So like, That's not fair. Those two plays were awesome. And the other one was Jeremiah Smith's one-handed touchdown catch against Michigan State from Devin Brown, by the way, which is the only time I've ever seen a NFL scout in a press box push away from the table and stand up after a play. It was nuts. It was the only time I've ever heard like legit cheering in the press box, but it wasn't even cheering because it was more like, oh my gosh, did he just do that? Or, there was like a couple of like, holy, what's like loudly in the press box. Like, I can't believe he did that. That play was incredible. But in this bracket, it's going against Jeremiah's first touchdown catch against Tennessee, where Ohio State set the tone for the whole playoff. How do you choose between those two plays? I don't know. So I think that it's a fun idea, the fun bracket. But, man, we're going to get it to a point here, and we already are in round 1, where, like, some plays are going against other just incredible plays that we're going to have to try to remember from this season. But it is a cool way to just look back on everything.
Yeah, and like you mentioned that we talked about the Caleb Downs punt return. I just went and looked, and it's going against like the Carnell Tate diving touchdown, which is obviously like is a cool individual play, but like some of those things you also can't understate the moment of how it happened. What like Carnell Tate catching a touchdown back in Chicago, like where he's
Yeah.
from. After, like some of those moments we just can't. Like Jaden Fielding kicking the field goal after what he had kind of been throughout the whole season. It's just it's hard to pick a top play from this season because when you win a national championship, there's typically a lot of good plays that happen.
Yeah. No, I agree. I just think it's fun. I wanted to talk about it. Um, I I think I know what will win, or at least what will be, the two finalists. I think they're on opposite sides of the bracket. Let me check. I mean, Through the Heart of Texas is going to be the Jack Sawyer scoop. No, that I think that's even Travion's. I don't know. No, Through the Heart of Texas is Jack Sawyer's scoop and score. It's on the same side of the bracket as Jeremiah's one-handed touchdown catch against Michigan State. So 3rd and 11 is on the opposite side of the bracket of the Scoop and Sawyer, right?
Figured.
So I think we know who's going to be in the finals. But then again, in the second round, Emeka's catch, one-handed catch for the touchdown against Oregon, down the middle, the rope from Will Howard, is going to have to go against Travion's 75-yard screen pass touchdown against Texas. How do you pick one of the best plays from the Rose Bowl against one of the best plays from the Cotton Bowl just for the right to get beat to shreds by the Sawyer scoop and score in the Final Four? Like, we've got some iconic moments here, man. That's the point I'm trying to make here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, it's hard to think about when you look at the four playoff games and you go, let's pull one play and just be like, that was the play of that game. I think obviously Jeremiah Smith's 3rd and 11, Jack Sawyer's scoop and score against Texas, like those two are pretty set. I'd assume you would go with Emeka Egbuka's touchdown, like you said, against Oregon. Like that kind of seems like the one. Honestly, though, if you could get a compilation of all the sacks that they had, that might be able to be a play in itself. And the Tennessee game, that's kind of difficult. I think, honestly, I might go with Travion Henderson's, was it his last touchdown or his second touchdown? The one where he just cut back final lane and boom, he was gone. The first touchdown was impressive. Like you said, both the fade balls there to Jeremiah Smith were impressive to catch Emeka. Like the Tennessee game is the hardest one to pick just because I think it was the first one. So none of the plays were like super game deciding, but still like picking the 4 like seminal moments from these, like the playoff run in itself is difficult. Narrowing all the plays down to one play that kind of defines the season is the best play. That's why it's a fan vote. You're just purely opinion because I think everybody can debate for every one of those 12 plays that are in the bracket and say this was my favorite play. So it'll be interesting to just see the results and at least see the percentages too.
The most underrated play of the season by far is Davison Igbinosun's interception against Penn State. I will not hear an argument otherwise. But the craziest thing, the actual crazy thing about this entire bracket is I can name a play from the Michigan game and a play from the first Oregon game, the loss, that aren't in the bracket because they were obviously in losses that were just incredible, potentially iconic plays if the result goes the other way. And if they win either of those games, then you've got to blow up the whole bracket and put those plays in there. Like Will Howard or Travion Henderson getting down to the 1 yard line against Oregon, or Cody Simon breaking up a 4th and goal against Oregon, or some of the stuff that they did. The Will Kazmarek catch against Oregon was incredible. The one where he broke his collarbone, or separated his shoulder, whatever the injury was. I think it was collarbone. Just an incredible run of plays there. The Jack Sawyer interception against Michigan should have been, if Ohio State could take care of its business on offense, should have been one of the most iconic plays in the history of the program. So, as we go through, and Ryan Day made this point so much during the playoff round, there are stories to be told, and you only get to tell those stories if you win the national championship. Well, guess what? They did. So now we get to tell all these stories, and the team is doing that by highlighting the plays of the year. But based on those plays, we can start to tell all of these stories of hey, and I'm not saying this happened to either one of us, but it's hey, I heard, from a source on Thursday that hey, I think Jeremiah's going to have a really big game here. And then he had a $187 against Oregon in the Rose Bowl and they win. It's different stories that'll come back to us as we over time, as we remember this playoff run. It's going to be fun to think about. But it's not as fun to think about as going to Wendy's and getting 2 faves for just $7, 2 faves for just $7. are you serious? It's got to be Wendy's. Terms apply, of course, of participating U.S. Wendy's. Dynamic duos at Wendy's. You can get spicy chicken sandwich and 10-piece nuggets, $7. And then you just, I don't know. For me, I would add on French fries because French fries are the reason that my face is puffy. They're my favorite food. They're my guilty pleasure food. If I am having a bad day, the only thing I want to eat is French fries. Do you have a guilty pleasure food, Mick?
I think French fries would be a good one. I think you get. Spencer put me on this a little bit. Spencer, for any of you guys that don't know, Spencer's a big ranch guy. I've slowly become more of a ranch guy. Getting a little ranch with the French fries is a good little mixture too. If you can get it kind of after the meal, French fries would be a good one. I think I'd go French fries with you too. It's a perfect side. Perfect side.
Yeah, French fries are my guilty pleasure, and Wendy's has great French fries. I would just add some French fries to that 2 for $7. A dynamic duo at Wendy's. I don't know if I could eat a spicy chicken sandwich and 10 chicken nuggets and French fries. That's probably a bridge too far for me. But also, it's not because it wouldn't taste good. It's just because I don't need all of that. But also, I want all of that because it's Wendy's. 2 for $7 right now, dynamic duos at Wendy's. I want to get into dynamic duos. We're going to switch back to the coaching moves, Mick, because we're going to talk about our favorite Wendy's dynamic duo. I think a dynamic duo that could be emerging is Ryan Day and Billy Fessler on the recruiting trail with quarterbacks. And look, man, like I know Ohio State already recruits quarterbacks at an incredible clip. Look at Devin Brown was a 5-star prospect. Kyle McCord was a 5-star prospect. CJ Stroud was a 5-star prospect. They got Justin Fields out of the portal. They landed Tavian St. Clair in this cycle. We're talking Julian Sand and Aaron Nolan. I know Nolan's already moved on, but he was a really highly regarded prospect. But man, like when you talk about the recruiter that they're adding in Billy Fessler, the people that talk about him on the recruiting trail, you add in the chops and the pedigree of a national championship winning coach like Ryan Day, which is crazy to say still, but that it's the reality. Like Ryan Day won a national championship. He's got that ring now. I think that those two could become like a very dynamic duo on the recruiting trail for these offensive guys. What do you think?
I think that's a good pull. I was going to go defense, but I said it on another show we did this week. I think the most dynamic duo for Ohio State this season is whatever you're going to be able to get from Tyler Bowen and Brian Hartline, assuming those are the two guys you have formatting this offense. I think the only person that has a larger impact on Brian Hartline's playing calling or that has a sizable impact on Brian Hartline's ability to call plays other than himself is Tyler Bowen. Because if you can organize this run game how you like it, and you compare it with some passing concepts from Ryan Day, from Brian Hartline, like there should be no issues. And it's the only way really that I think Tyler Bowen and Brian Hartline have to be able to put a game plan together every week that makes Ryan Day confident and allowing Brian Hartline to call plays. So that's kind of the dynamic duo that I'm paying most attention to. I think you go defense. If you want to go dynamic duo, I get my dynamic duo. I go get myself my wife a dynamic duo from Wendy's. You can also go defense and get Matt Guerreri and Tim Walton is another one that we could talk about. But there's dynamic duos all over the field, obviously. And but I'll go Bowen and Hartline for sure.
If I could just throw one more in, I think, like you said, Walton and Guerreri, like they're really recruiting well. Guerreri has a chance to land like 2 of the top 3 or 4 safeties in the country in 2026. I have no doubt that Tim Walton's going to end up finding a couple corners that are high-level players after just landing Devin Sanchez and Aaron Scott and Bryce West and, the tantalizing potential of Jordan Woods, who's an underrated guy that Ohio State kind of fell in love with late in the process. Like those two together are making this secondary hard to like. So full disclosure, I'm doing the roster resets over at lettermenrow.com right now. And I went into it thinking like, well, they're going to take a step back in the secondary, not because of just because of the second safety. We already know that Jermaine Matthews and Devin Sanchez and Aaron Scott and Davis Nick-Vanosen are going to be back for the corners. So you don't really have a lot of doubt about the corners, but the safeties, it's like, well, who's going to play the second safety? I don't know if it matters as much. Like, I think they'll be ready to play with Tim Walton and Matt Guerreri, or Matty G, as some people call him. So, like, recruiting, I have no questions about with those guys. And then development-wise, they seem like they're on a pretty good path with all of their players. So maybe they should be the dynamic duo, like you said.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned recruiting for Matt Guerreri. If you pull up the on-3 industry ranking, we say, let's go look at the top safeties in the 2026 class. It's going to read Blaine Bradford out of Baton Rouge Catholic in Louisiana, Matt Guerreri and Ryan Day when we saw him last week. Then it's Braylon Womack out of Mississippi, Ryan Day and Matt Guerreri went and saw him last week. Then the third guy will be Jet Washington, who is the former nephew of the late, great Kobe Bryant, former basketball standout. out all the way out in Bishop Gorman, Las Vegas. You go, oh, Ohio State's not recruiting anybody else in the state of Nevada. McElroy still made the trip out red eye to Las Vegas last week to see Jet Washington and meet with his family, kind of sit down with them. So the top three safeties on the On3 industry ranking, McElroy saw all of them last week. Tim Walton also went and saw Albert Hill, who's the number one corner on the On3 industry ranking last week. So recruiting does not show any signs of stopping, especially in the secondary. Because I think, I got to see a little bit of it today. McElroy is a very personable guy. Everybody knows Tim Walton's a very personable guy. So there's no signs of those two slowing down when it comes to being a dynamic duo on the recruiting trail in that secondary.
Yeah, Ohio State's not backing down either on the defensive side at all. They would kind of concede Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, in recent years, or the last, 15 years. They just kind of concede that area. That's just too deep of the South. They're not going to go down and get those guys. They took the time to go see Blaine Bradford. They're not going to be afraid of LSU this time around, even though he's right there in Baton Rouge where LSU is. He's still heavily favored to stay in the South for his recruitment, but it's going to weigh on him that Ohio State, the national champions, came to see him despite not really recruiting Louisiana ever. Braylon Womack, the Buckeyes currently lead in the on-3 RPM for him over Ole Miss. He's from Mississippi. Jet Washington, like you said, UCLA at 22%, Ohio State at 19%. He's the third-ranked safety in the country. Then the fourth-ranked safety in the country, Jire Edwards from St. Francis Academy. The RPM says Ohio State's in good shape there. And then Simeon Caldwell's the nephew of Tim Walton, if I'm not mistaken, or cousin of Tim Walton, if I'm not mistaken. And he might end up at Ohio State. So, the safety board right now, man, you talk about dynamic duo, whatever the two top guys that McElroy signs are, they might just be the dynamic duo.
Yeah, and another guy in that top 10 that nobody really talks about because he doesn't talk at all, really, is for anybody that doesn't know, Spencer and I are both big Steelers fans. There's some Steelers stuff all around us around here, around me at least. Minka Fitzpatrick, stud safety for the Steelers. He has a younger brother, Justice Fitzpatrick, down at St. Thomas Aquinas down there in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Ryan Day also stopped by down there while he was in South Florida, visited with him. I think there's probably a chance they could get him on campus for a visit this spring. I imagine all of these 4 or 5 guys we've talked about now, aside from maybe Jire Edwards, who did not include Ohio State in his recent top list, but those things are obviously fluid. I think we could see all these guys. Jet Washington probably get back on campus. Braylon Womack will likely get back on campus. Blaine Bradford, who's camped and then also visited for the Indiana game, I believe. I imagine you could see him get back on campus this spring. And like you mentioned, obviously, Blaine Bradford is in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He goes to a school that I believe is within walking distance of LSU. But the one thing that Brian Kelly, when he walks over to Baton Rouge Catholic High School, he cannot do is flash a national championship ring. Now Ryan Day can do that on the recruiting trail. He walks in with the national championship gear, national championship hat. Obviously, that's a metaphorical thing because Ryan Day walks in very classy with everywhere he goes. Now, James Laurinaitis, Tim Walton, some of these other assistants, they were very well seen with the national championship gear last week, and rightfully so, because if you win it, you get to wear it.
If you win it, you get to wear it. That's a fantastic point, Mick. I'm going to have to remember that. I don't win a lot of things, so I don't get to wear a lot of things. I just, I don't win a lot of things. Ryan Day does, because Ryan Day in the last month has won, or the last month and a half, has won a Rose Bowl, a Cotton Bowl, and a national championship. Man, can you believe I just realized the Rose Bowl was more than a month ago. That's crazy to me. That's just crazy.
Insane. And speaking of the winning, you get to wear it. It's not. I'm not just saying that, folks. It's Storm Miller, who's the on 300 linebacker from Strongsville, Ohio. His brother plays at Clemson. He's going to return to Clemson for another year. Really good player and he's a top target for James Laurinaitis in the 2026 class. Laurinaitis went up to visit him and Sincere Johnson out of Cleveland Glenville last week, and Storm even told me, I said, hey, was Coach Laurinaitis wearing any of the national championship gear? He said he had a coat on over it, but he made sure that if any other coaches were walking in or anybody else was coming to visit Strongsville, he was going to kind of take the coat off a little bit to make sure the national championship gear was flashed around. And you saw it. I believe we saw it. Everybody loves the big Nike white zip-ups, quarter zips. Mark Pantoni, who was at the coaches clinic today, he was wearing one of those. Ohio State, I think Tim Walton was wearing one. James Laurinaitis, Carlos Loughlin, all these guys are wearing the national championship gear because right now they don't have the rings just yet. So you got to wear the gear that everybody saw. Everybody loves to see coaches rocking, and it's what the players saw them wearing on the field too.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at those hoodies, the white ones. They were fantastic. I saw the price on them, and I was like, man, that's crazy. But also there's a lot of Ohio State fans that are really going to want that because, I mean, it helps you kind of remember what you saw there with the national championship. It's a good piece. It's not just it doesn't say national championship on it, but it's got the 2025 over here. It's got that gold Nike swoosh. Like that thing says national champions as much as anything else. And Notre Dame fans aren't going to want to wear that because it'll remind them that they lost the national championship. So that's kind of Ohio State's to have and to hold because, like you said, when you win it, you get to wear it.
If we're going back to dynamic duos for a second, let's bring up this dynamic duo that just got a big deal done this week. Ryan Day and Ross Bjork. I've been to the coaches clinic a handful of times. Ryan Day's spoken at it several years now. Ohio State head coach speaks at it every year. The one person I had not seen until this year was Ross Bjork. Did show up at the coaches clinic, was there briefly at the beginning when Ryan Day talked about it. Obviously, you strike the extension. Just those two seem to be operating at complete simpatico all together, tied in as well as anybody that we've seen kind of running with a head coach and athletic director in the college football space right now.
Yeah, I mean, 12.5 million reasons to get along, but also like they seem to just get along in general. And Bjork showed a lot of faith kind of coming out in favor of Ryan Day after the Michigan game when a lot of people wanted, Day to be tried on High Street in front of Canes. And instead, he goes out and wins a national championship, and Bjork kind of looks like a genius for backing him up there in December when he talks to, I believe the Columbus Dispatch had that about Ryan Day with Ross Bjork. Mick, before we get out of here, we got to talk about it. There's only one Buckeye in the Super Bowl, the big game, if you will. It's Paris Campbell, which, shout out to Paris, man. He's gone through some injuries in the NFL. He's bounced around a little bit, but he's going to play in the Super Bowl, and if the Eagles win, he'll be a Super Bowl champion. The Chiefs, for some reason, seem allergic to Ohio State players. I don't really get that, but there's good players there, and if you want to be the best team, it's weird though because Ohio State's been one of the best teams, yet they don't have a lot of guys in the Super Bowl. And like Georgia has I think 9 because the Eagles love Georgia players, whereas like if the Saints were in the Super Bowl, then we would be talking about all of these Buckeyes, or I guess the Saints used to be the New Orleans Buckeyes with Sean Payton. Maybe we'll see the Broncos as like the Denver Buckeyes with Sean Payton. Who knows? But I just think it's interesting. There's just one Buckeye in there. But who do you got in the Super Bowl?
I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to dig in, really. I haven't been tuned in. I'm ready to eat the snacks, though. We got a good snack lineup coming to the Walker household on Sunday. I have really no preference on this game. I, unlike most people in America, don't really I'm not bothered by Patrick Mahomes. I think he's a fine enough guy. I think people really don't like his family around him, which is fine and understandable considering what they've done. So whether it's based on what they've done in the past, if you dislike them, that's fine. Like you said, if anything, I'd root for Paris Campbell, because I think if you were to ask Brian Hartline and some of these guys in that wide receiver room, who were the guys that really got this new era of what's been going on under him started, it'd probably be Paris Campbell and the Ben Victors and the Terry McLaurin. So you got to root for a guy like that that's kind of struggled with injuries, gone through some things, and now seemingly has his shot to help Philadelphia win their second Super Bowl in the history of the franchise.
I don't remember if it's the history. I think it might be. Yeah. I know they lost one to the Patriots.
Well, the thing you got to remember, we were talking about these Buckeyes being not on the Super Bowl teams. A lot of these Super Bowl teams year over year pick pretty low in the draft. Marvin Harrison Jr. does not slip to the 30s, from what I understand. He kind of goes pretty high. Same with Paris Johnson Jr. A lot of these other guys that are getting picked. Maybe this year. You have a lot of these fifth-year seniors that are. I think when Spencer does a good job rallying up these mock drafts every now and then. Emeka Ibuka, Tyleik Williams, Josh Simmons, Jack Sawyer, all these guys kind of looking like they might be low 20 picks. Maybe next year we're going to see Jack Sawyer in the Super Bowl with the Detroit Lions, or you're going to see Tyleik Williams with the Bills, or something interesting next year when some of these seniors get into the draft and end up at their next place of employment and next stage of their career.
Just give me Emeka Ibuka to Pittsburgh, man. That's all I want.
I would agree.
That's all I want.
Now, Spencer, I was talking about this with somebody today. How is this, based on your own math, how are the draft picks ending up here? Are you thinking record getting broken? How? I know the next step of content for you is kind of the scouting combine with interviews and whatnot. Have you prepared to look at this record? Is it getting broken by Ohio State this year?
15? I don't think so. I think it'll get close. I don't think it'll get broken. The problem with the 15 is that Michigan tied it last year with a run of 8 guys in the 7th round. And then they're like, oh, we broke the draft record. I'm like, oh, okay. Really talented team. I think Michigan 2023 is a team that's going to get overlooked in the history books because of the cheating scandal, because they cheated. But it was ultra talented, like ridiculously talented, but still like kind of a system award if you're taking all these guys in the 7th round. Like that Georgia team that had like 15 draft picks, it was like 4th round and the 15th guy went off the board. It's like, were they going to have 20? And it's like, no, they didn't quite have that. But like Michigan got a lot of 7th round guys to help get to that record. Ohio State could, I guess. Like a guy like Ty Hamilton, I don't think is going to be like a top 100 pick, but I think he's going to be like a draft pick. I don't know where Lathan Ransom falls on the draft board. Probably like in the middle rounds, just because the injury history. Like I know Emeka and Josh Simmons, and the one that I'm really, really intrigued by is like Josh Fryer, who has 2 years of 2 years of starting experience, looked pretty good at the end of his career, decent in the middle of his career, and early. That 2023 Indiana game was rough. So like he continued to progress, and maybe his best football is still in front of him, but I don't know what he'll test like. I don't know what his pro day will look like, what he's going to do at the combine, if he needs anything medical wise, because he was playing injured. I believe a chest injury at the end of the year that he just completely barreled through and played through, and was talking about that on the field with us after the national championship game. As the confetti was falling, and I remember talking to him about the injury that he was going through and how he wasn't letting it affect him. I wonder if that kind of slows him down in this process. If a guy like Josh Fryer is going to get drafted, though, and Ty Hamilton gets drafted and Lathan Ransom gets drafted, and I think Cody Simon's going to be a pretty high draft pick compared to what people might think, like then maybe we're cooking with gas there. Maybe there is a record to be broken, but I do question whether some of these guys will end up being draft picks at the next level, or if they'll just earn roster spots. But these Ohio State UDFAs, a lot of times they get into camps and then all of a sudden they do earn roster spots. So I guess it doesn't really matter if they break the record or not.
With a guy like Justin Fry headed off to the Arizona Cardinals, do you think there's a call between Ryan and Justin in the 7th round if we're sitting on 15 and say, hey Justin, can we throw a flyer on Josh Fryer in the 7th here, and kind of maybe he plays guard for you, maybe he lines up a left guard next to Paris Johnson Jr.
Well, it helps Mick that like Will Howard is going to be credited as like an Ohio State guy, and Seth McLaughlin is going to be credited as an Ohio State guy because they only played one season, but they're Ohio State. So like both of those guys are going to get drafted. So that's 2 already. Then they had 8 that were coming back. If Sonny Styles was leaving and Dave Snigg-Benosin was leaving, I'd be like, yep, it's record time. Get the record book out and get ready to rewrite it, because I think they're going to get to 15, and they'll probably stop at 15. But with those 2 coming back, if they're at like 13, you're going to look back on this and be like, oh, man, they could have had the record, but they paid those 2 guys NIL and they decided to come back. How dare they take the record from this group? But I'll say no for now. No on the record.
Yeah, darn player retention, just throwing off the potential for broken records here.
Well, that record is going to be so hard to break moving forward because of the transfer portal, because of NIL, bringing guys back. Like, to have that many guys leave after 1 year, I think is going to be almost impossible moving forward. So we'll see. That record might stand forever. The Michigan and Georgia records.
It's still pretty interesting. I grabbed one of my buddies a depth chart from the national championship, and it's going to be interesting in 20 years when him and I go back and look at this thing, and it's going to be at quarterback, former Kansas State quarterback and 1-year transfer Will Howard, and then at right tackle it's going to be 3-star Josh Fryer, and it's going to be at left tackle your former left guard Donovan Jackson. Just looking back at that's going to be hilarious to talk about on Wendy's Lettermen Live in 20 years when we're still doing this for some reason.
It makes it even more funny when you think about what these guys' NFL careers could look like. Because who's to say like Will Howard doesn't end up as like a starting quarterback in the NFL and wins like a Super Bowl, and all of a sudden it's like, well, they had Super Bowl champion Will Howard. Of course they won the national championship, but a lot of people were doubting him. You know what I mean? Like, we'll look back on something. They had Donovan Jackson, who played 17 years in the NFL and never got hurt once and was like a Joe Thomas guy. Like, of course they won the national championship. And it's like, well, we didn't really think that when he made the move to tackle after Zen Mihalski got hurt. You know, it's just going to be fun to look back at that. This was kind of a look back episode of the national championship. This was kind of a look ahead episode with some recruiting. It was more just like a little bit of a happy hour, but it was actually just 45 minutes. But we're going to get out of here. It's Lettermen Live. It's presented by Wendy's. Of course, go to Wendy's, 2 for $7, the dynamic duos at Wendy's. And go to lettermenrow.com. Of course, go to lettermenrow.com. $1 for your first 7 days. That's right, $1 for your first 7 days. We'll see you over at lettermenrow.com. That's Mick Walker on the other side of your screen doing his best to cover recruiting every day of the year. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. I'm covering the team side every day of the year at lettermenrow.com. Alex Gleitman down in New Orleans for the Super Bowl. Have fun, AG. We'll see you back. We'll actually go back to New Jersey, get back to work at lettermenrow.com after the Super Bowl, after you have some fun down on Bourbon Street. Hope you're enjoying that. And hope you guys enjoyed this 45 minutes of Lettermen Live presented by Wendy's. A little bit of a Friday happy hour, we'll just call it. Again, that's Mick. I'm just Spencer. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys over at lettermenrow.com.